And we're on.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Limitless Mindset Round Set Table. And today we got a good one. We got the final law, 9 laws of cautious creation, ending today with the law of gestation. So we waited all the way to the end to talk about the law of gestation. It's a pleasing end, right? So if you've been waiting this whole time, congratulations. You've showed the persistence, the patience to make it all the way through the final 9 laws. With that being said, I have 2 awesome dudes with me to talk about the law of gestation, Mr. John Bodnar and Mr. Tim Cruz. And before we get rock and roll, I'll let them introduce themselves so you guys know who they are, how cool they are. But before, I'll introduce you to who I am. So my name is Logan Manzanares. I'm a business owner, fitness professional, transformed well over 2,000 people's lives through this little thing we call health and fitness. Real estate investor, husband, a father, and one of the most grateful people on this planet. And so like I said, we got an awesome episode today, and we got 2 awesome dudes. And so, Tim, if you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
How's it going, guys? Happy Thursday. My name is Coach Tim. I'm one of the coaches over here at BSB Wealthy Body Coaching. I am a self-admitted meathead. I love picking heavy things up, setting it back down. But honestly, what really gets me up and going in the morning is serving you guys and helping everybody that I work with, everybody I come in contact with, becoming the best, the strongest, the wealthiest version of themselves. And also, I'm on Logan's heels for being the most grateful person on this planet.
Love it. I love it. All right, John, who you be, man? Who you be?
Well, my name is John Bodnar, and I'm also a BSB Wealthy Body Coach. And my purpose in life is, quite honestly, very similar to Tim's, showing people what is possible, helping them realize their full potential by focusing on them, focusing on their outside self, their inside self, and making sure they realize, like, you can do it and you deserve it. You can have what you want. Fulfillment, connection, wealth, whatever that looks like.
It's awesome. I love it. All right, fellas. Well, everyone's waited. Let's give them what they're looking for here. We're looking for the results here. So, law of gestation. It states that there is a natural gestation period for all acts of creation. The bigger the goal, the longer the gestation period. Just like seeds that take time to grow before they yield fruit, our dreams and goals must also be nurtured and cared for over time until they are manifested into reality. Patience and perseverance allow for dreams to become reality. So, John, I'll actually start with this one and tell me what's your definition of law of gestation in your terms?
Really, it's very simply put, it's delayed gratification. It's the understanding that what you want to accomplish will take time. And if you want to be a millionaire, it's going to take a lot longer than saying, oh, I want to, have 10,000 in the bank. And so just having the patience and the willingness to wait for what you want, do the boring work, as we like to say, take the small steps every single day and realize how long that path actually is, the more likely you are to reach it. And the faster that you will actually reach it by having that patience.
That's awesome. Tim, what's your definition of the law of gestation in your eyes, in your terms?
So I'm going to kind of fixate a little bit on the word gestation. So if we think about just the gestation period of having a baby, right? The seed must be planted, not to be crude, but the seed must be planted. And then 9 months later, a baby comes out. Only if the mother, the father, the womb, if you will, is taken care of, right? If the mom eats correctly, she takes care of it, she makes sure she gets the doctor's appointments, yada, 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 does all the little things, then a healthy baby is born. It's a lot like law of conscious creation. We plant the seed of a thought of what we want to do, a goal. That seed plant, it has to take time to form into a fully born baby, if you will. And how you go through that process really dictates the health of that child. So if you think about it in terms of a baby being born, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, which is great, because I think that's actually the next slide here. Let's actually talk about that, talk about gestation in that form, right? And so there's 3 different examples here. A mouse gestates in 20 days, right? A human, like Tim said, 9 months, and an elephant, 22 months. And so the reason why I use these 3 specific examples is that what this tells you is, like, the bigger the goal, the longer that gestation period. And so that's how you can think about your goals, like just like how John had said, like, if you want to make $10,000, well, you want to be able to make that in a day, a week, a month, right? Depending on kind of where you're starting at. If you want to make $1 million, it might take a little bit longer. Maybe it takes you a year, maybe it takes you a decade, right? It really just depends on where you start at. And so ultimately, like, the bigger the goal you have, the longer the gestation period takes. And so let's revert back this into weight loss. So if you want to lose 10 pounds, well, shoot, like, you can lose 10 pounds in the matter of a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to lose 100 pounds, do you think you can lose 100 pounds in the matter of a couple of weeks?
I hope not.
I can't even think of a cheater way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so most importantly, it's just having the right expectations. And also, so this as well is like, if you don't lose 100 pounds, let's say your goal is to lose 100 pounds in 6 months. Okay. What happens if you don't lose 100 pounds in 6 weeks or in 6 months? Like what happens? Like, do you just quit on your goal? Do you reassess your goal? Do you feel defeated because you didn't reach your goal in 6 months? Like ultimately understanding that, like once you, like having the goal is important. Having a target is one of the most important things you can do, because at least you're going somewhere. Because if you have no plan, you have no goal, you have no direction, well then anywhere will get you there, right? So just always understanding that the bigger goals are the longer the gestation period takes. And honestly, the more that you yourself can push this gestation period on, like what if it takes you a year to get there? Is that okay if you lose 100 pounds and lose it forever? What if it takes a year and a half? Right? So let's say you're 40 years old, let's say it takes you 2 years to lose 100 pounds, but you're able to keep it off forever. Like, is that worth it? Is that okay? Right? So like ultimately, the more you can extend the gestational period, because ultimately, like you're the one who actually picks it, unless you're giving birth to a baby, then you can't pick it. But outside of that, all the goals you pick, you ultimately are the one who like puts this expectation of a gestation period in there. And really it's your expectations that are the things that can oftentimes crush you. And there's a really quote later in here that will touch on as a way for you to actually turn those expectations into something else, which I'll hold off on that. But that being said, the gestational period really serves two purposes, right? First, it gives us time to take the practical steps to achieve the vision. And second, it proves that we'll actually pay the price. Okay, if your dream is actually worth achieving, then you will need the staying power to stick with it regardless of time and obstacles. So Tim, follow up your thoughts on the idea that the gestational period, like why we have it and what it's for.
So I think it's important to, and you said a couple of things that I kind of want to cue in on. But number one, it's important to accept this as a law, right? Like it's just reality. When we have goals, like we'll just keep it in the fitness and health, weight loss department. When I set goals with myself, but also with clients, I like to follow an acronym that I call them SMART goals. So SMART. And what SMART stands for is it's got to be specific, it's got to be measurable, it's got to be attainable, it's got to be realistic, and it has to have a timeline. So that's the SMART. So if we take this into account, like if someone says, hey, like I want to lose 100 pounds, and I want to do that by my sister's wedding in 4 months, I'm going to say like, cool, that's not a SMART goal. And I'm using the acronym instead of like attacking the person, because it's not attainable and it's not realistic. And that kind of brings me to my point. And I don't want to talk too much about it because I know we're going to talk about this in the future slides, but expectation really dictates our fulfillment and our joy in hitting those goals. So to use that example that you just used, if your goal is to lose 100 pounds in 6 months, and let's say, you did everything right, you put in the hard work every single day and you dropped 70 pounds in 6 months, which is still a ridiculous amount of weight in 6 months. The person's going to end at 6 months and be like, I'm a failure. Mm-hmm. Why didn't this work? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with the process? When in all actuality, like, bro, you lost 70 pounds in 6 months. Like, that's awesome. If you adjusted your timeline to make it attainable and realistic, we'd probably be looking at more like 18 months to 24 months is more of a realistic timeline for 100-pound weight loss. So having that expectation, a lot of times you'll hear like head coaches when they're talking to their teams going into the playoffs, like one of their number one jobs is to manage their team's expectations. They don't want to get them too high and too low. And the purpose of that is really like, it's really to fuel that fire of keeping going. So if you have such high expectations and you don't meet that, it really kind of takes the wind right out of your sails. And conversely, if the timeline's like, I want to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to give myself 2 years to do it. It's not a short enough timeline to really motivate you to do anything differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think about with this law of gestation, accepting it as a rule. It is a rule. Some of it is literally physics. And then also managing expectations, I think, is really important for the long-term success of the goal.
I think you made a good point too, that we always talk about like shooting for the stars, but you also talk about like not shooting high enough and like not having enough push or motivation as well. So it's like, that's where the law of gestation comes in, is that it really is more of an art more than anything, because obviously if you shoot for 100 pounds in 6 months and then you're defeated, or if you shoot for 10 pounds in 2 years, you're like, yeah, I hit that in 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, like, there's a gap on both ends. So I think that's where the art of understanding the law of gestation is super important. And ultimately, like, the more and more that you do something, the better and better you get at actually figuring out what that, like, how long actually is going to take, right? John, give me your thoughts on this one.
I feel that understanding the law of gestation is almost like self-forgiveness in a way, or giving yourself some actual love. You know, if
Yeah.
in Tim's example of saying, "Oh, I lost 70 pounds in 6 months. I wanted to lose 100. Like, what's wrong with me?"
Yeah.
You know, that's where you start to get into the self-hate, which is one of the most immobilizing things you can experience. And you know, until you have the realistic expectations, you're not going to have that freedom to continue to work on it. Like, hey, you know, this is going to take me 2 years, but I'm in it and I'm going to do it. So here I am taking the steps every day. And then again, you're going to get there faster than you even imagined. And so it's the willingness to not only stick to it and have the staying power, because that's important too, but the more realistic your timeline is, the more powerful that sticking power becomes, and the more gentle you'll be with yourself, which most of the time is pretty darn important.
Awesome.
And another thing I think that's really important is the last part of this slide. If your dream is worth achieving, then you will have the sticking power to stay with it, regardless of the time and obstacles. So, for instance, like, let's say you had that 100-pound weight loss, but if the consequences of not losing that weight is heart attack, stroke, death, or even on the lower end, like diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, you're on medication and have to have surgeries and stuff the rest of your life. Like, that's a powerful reason. It shouldn't.
Or just not being happy, not being confident, not feeling good about yourself either. Like, that's like the next
Exactly.
step.
The internal side is just as powerful. But like, if you truly believe that the goal is worth it, it shouldn't matter. The gestation period shouldn't matter. Like, if someone told me, hey, like, you will become a pro bodybuilder if you do X, Y, and Z, and they said they didn't give me like a timeline, but it's something I really want to do, I'm going to continue to do every single day, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of sickness, regardless of injury, regardless of relational issues. I'm going to keep doing the dang thing because that means that much to me. I don't care about the timeline near as much. And then I start falling in love with the process, which is really, in my opinion, when you win. When you start identifying with the process rather than the result.
Yeah, 100%. And so now we're gonna talk about the other side, right? The false expectations, which we both alluded to earlier. And so, like, when something doesn't manifest on our schedule, it means that we have false expectations, right? We're out of alignment with actual truth, which is what Tim talked about, like being the actual, like, science and the physics behind achieving a certain goals. Either the creation itself needs more time, or we haven't ourselves become the person who we need to become in order for us to be worthy of that creation. And so this is the line I was talking about earlier, is like, now it's time to trade your expectations for appreciation, right? And so basically what this means is that, again, we touched on it earlier, but essentially, if you don't reach your goal on the time that you thought it did, it's either like your goal was unrealistic, or like you just haven't done enough to do it. But either way, who is the person who's in control still?
You always.
It's always,
right? You are always in control, right? And so you just need to make the adjustments, like, oh, like, by me saying I want to lose 100 pounds in 6 months, was that a little aggressive? Yeah, it was a little aggressive. But I lost 70 pounds. I'm like, holy shit. Like, how much is that? That's 70 pounds, 6 months. That's like what? Man, it's like 2.5, 3 pounds a week. Like, that's pretty good, right? Like, dang, okay, I'm doing really good. I just need to adjust my timeline, right? Or let's say that your goal was to lose, more realistic, let's say your goal was to lose, let's say 40 pounds in 6 months, but you only lost 25. You're like, why? Like, why was that? It's like, well, I didn't, really follow my nutrition 100%. I skipped a couple workouts here and there, and you know what? It was on me, right? And so ultimately, it's like you have not got the skills in order for you to lose the 40 pounds yet. You haven't shown that you have the discipline. You haven't shown that you have the work ethic. You haven't shown that you're able to overcome, XYZ excuses. And so ultimately, it's either way, it's still in your control, right? And so, but the fact that you still lost 25 pounds, you're like, okay, that's still good, right? I can still be happy with that stuff. Now I just have to readjust my timeline. It's like, okay, like if I choose not to do these things, then I should just extend my timeline further, right? And if you're okay with that, be okay with that. Or if you're like, hey, like I know that I need to actually step up. I need to be consistent with my exercise. I need to be consistent with my nutrition. Well, you need to do that. And that way it helps you shorten that distance between where you are and where you want to go. Right. And then the same idea of like trading expectations, your expectations for appreciation. Like when you do, like instead of like expecting certain things, just appreciate you're still in the game. Just appreciate you have the opportunity to lose weight. Just appreciate that you have like you look every single day being like alive, and like the fact that you have you live in a world and live in a place where you have the ability to like make this change. You don't have to worry about like just surviving and food on the table and gas in your tank and roof over your head. Like be grateful for that, right? Just the fact that you have the opportunity to actually get better, because not everybody actually does. And so I think that's something that's super important to understand, is like, and then all of a sudden when you come from appreciation and gratitude, like those things that once seemed like big deals and things that really bothered you, like they roll off. And you're like, hey, that's just part of the process. I appreciate that, right? Thank you for teaching me the right lesson. And it's easier to overcome. Yeah. So John, tell me what your thoughts are on the not actually hitting your goal in the timeline that you thought when you first started.
Well, I really like the piece that's we haven't become who we need to become yet, because most of the time, for myself, that's what it has been. Whether it's maybe I hit a certain financial goal and I feel good about it, but I don't allow myself to feel proud because I know that, or I feel like I didn't earn it, something like that, or I don't hit a goal. So like when I first started exercising, I got newbie gains. I got stronger real fast, put on some muscle, and then I hit a bit of a standstill after about a year. And it was mostly a mental one, but I was so frustrated. And I remember vulnerability time. I was sitting in the Smith's parking lot with my wife, and I was just telling her, like, I'm just so upset. I'm not hitting my goals. I'm not looking good. Like, I don't feel good about me, and I haven't done anything. And I started crying, and she reminded me of two things. Number one is, look how far you've come. Right? Like looking at the gestation period of look what your ambitions actually are. Look how far you've come from when you started, and go from there. And now, hey, what do you need to do differently to continue on? She actually asked me that. And looking back at it, that was a really good coaching moment for me. And there's a reason I remember it 2 years later. And so the answer was, I didn't know enough yet. I didn't know enough about nutrition yet. I didn't know enough about exercise yet. I thought I did, but I was wrong. And so in order to hit my goals, I had to learn more. And I wasn't the person that I needed to become to continue my fitness journey and get to where I am now. And I will always be learning more. That's one of the best lessons I ever learned.
It's funny because life always gives you the lesson first, and then you have to learn it, right? Or yeah, it gives you the lesson first, and it's your job to learn it. Whereas like in school, it's actually the way around. It's like we're given the lesson first, or given the answer first, and then the lesson. And it's funny just how life is that that's just how it works. And so ultimately, like it's telling you like what you haven't learned yet is that you don't know about nutrition or exercise, or like how long it's actually going to take. And I think that's really cool. Tim, what are your thoughts on this one?
So first off, I'm gonna pick apart a little bit of language here. So right off the bat, I do think everybody has the ability and the opportunity to get better. So like being grateful, I think grateful that you have the opportunity, but all of us have the opportunity to get better. We might not have access to a gym or grocery store or good living conditions, but that's only one facet of life. Like we all have the ability to get better every single day. And that alone gives me reason enough to be grateful for just being alive. Second is I really want to hone in on appreciation. So this was a huge roadblock for me mentally. When I started this whole growth process mentally, personal growth type stuff situation, I clung to the fear of not being good enough as if that was my edge. That was the thing that drove me in the morning to get up and to put in the work and to get better, because I had this fear that I was never going to be good enough. And in fact, I would say even after everything that I've accomplished, I still felt not good enough. And my therapist, my counselor challenged me because I was telling her, like, I'm kind of afraid to let go of that. And she's like, why? I'm like, because that's what gives me my edge. That's what keeps me going. That's when I go to dark places in the gym when things freaking hurt. And I got to get this workout in, or I got 5 more reps and it sucks. I would go to those dark places and use that for fuel, and it would drive me. But I never felt satisfied. I never felt proud of myself. And she challenged me. She's like, I bet you can find a stronger motivation than fear. Fear is a definite, powerful motivation, right? Like Freudian psychology, human beings have the proclivity to either move away from pain or towards pleasure, right? And the moving away from pain is generally the strongest motivating factor that we have. But she challenged me. So it took me a minute. It took me several sessions to really come up with that answer. And I landed right back on gratitude and appreciation. Like if I wake up every single morning and I'm thankful that I have this ability or this opportunity that we all do. I have this ability to improve every single day. And I'm grateful for the gifts, the talents, the skills that I've been blessed with already. Like that's like literally the difference between, do you guys watch like the Marvel, like the Avengers and whatnot?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you remember like the first Avengers, like Tony Stark developed like this self-containing energy system that never burned out, right? It was a light for the world to see. I'm quoting the movie right now. So imagine like fear is like gasoline, right? It's gasoline, you light it, it burns really hot and fast, but eventually it goes off and you keep having to add more gasoline to it. Versus we have this self-containing nuclear energy system that propels itself. That's the difference between fear and gratitude. Gratitude perpetuates. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and I don't have to keep feeding it. I don't have to keep adding fuel to the fire. It burns cleaner, and you leave those sessions, you leave every single thing with a totally different outlook than you did versus that hamster wheel to nowhere of fear that I'm not going to be good enough. So I really want to hone in on the gratitude and appreciation, because like out of everything, like I find this to be one of the most central, like transformative things that I found in my own life.
Yeah, it's awesome you say that, because when we come from gratitude, you just come from a place of peace. When you come from a place of peace, you can make better decisions. You think clear, and you really actually put it in perspective. You actually have perception, and it's not emotional, and you can look at it from like reality, right? Truth, as to be said. And like we all know that health and fitness is not a like start and stop thing. It's not a 12-week, it's not a 6-month, it's not a 1-year program. It's like what you do forever. And when you just like come out from that expectation, it's just like you almost like eliminate the gestation period all combined, and you just have different goals along the way. That you have like these small gestational goals, I guess you could call them, but ultimately like you're always the point of the game is just to continue to play. That really is the best way to put it. It never ends. And when you come at peace with that, all of a sudden these questions of like, do I have to eat this way forever? Do I have to exercise this way forever? Do I have to XYZ? All of a sudden it just goes away. And you just figure out like, how do I make this work for me right now? How do I sell myself on doing this right now? Like, how do I enjoy the process? How do I have gratitude? How do I have appreciation for what I'm doing right now? It's not like something that like I don't like doing, because ultimately like saying you like or do not like something is literally your choice. Just like John said earlier, like it is your choice to say, I like working out, I don't like working out. Like I can say I like working out. Like I can actually make that choice right now. After almost 800 days of working out in a row, I can say that right now. And like, that's my choice. Right. And so by you who's ever listening to this, like you have the choice to say, I don't like eating healthy. And you have the choice to say, I like eating healthy. Right. I have the, like, is that your, like that's ultimately your choice. And that goes to beliefs, which we'll talk about later on. Like, which of those beliefs actually going to serve you? Like, does the belief that I don't like to eat healthy, is that belief going to serve you? Right. And again, like, we'll touch on that here in a little bit, but ultimately, just like getting rid of the timeline is like the number one thing you can ever do to make yourself feel just so much better. That's my take-home message for the law of gestation on this slide anyway. And so take action today without knowing how it will develop exactly, right? So one step leads to another. Doors open you never imagined would. Meet people, form relationships. Small, consistent actions in the right direction are the key. Master being present, patient, at peace to create space for your creation to manifest. John, piggyback on that.
Best example I got is meeting you. So I was in a place, I had lost my job, unemployed for a long time, and I been coaching my family a little bit, and I decided like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna become a coach. I'm gonna look for something, and I found you, and I never imagined that it would take me down this path of talking to however many people are listening to this podcast about the law of gestation, right? And or leading to the fulfillment that I've experienced. And so having kind of goes back to the law of faith as well, like have faith to take the step without knowing how it's going to develop, get rid of the expectations. And the good news is, like, if it's not developing in a favorable way, go back. And if it is developing in a favorable way, keep going, just keep going. And that's what I'm doing here. And I'm thankful that I took the action. I had the support to take the action. And if you don't take the action, you're never going to get there. So just go. That's really it. Just go.
I love that. Love that. Tim.
So I think this kind of it doubles down on the last slide for sure, or at least like what you said about the last slide. One of the best things you can do is eliminate the timeline, right? And what that means to me when I hear someone say, so like me and my best friend, one of my best friends back in college, it took me a little longer than the average person to get through college. Like we were told it's supposed to take like 3 to 4 years. Like it took me like 8. I didn't want to go into student debt, and that's a whole nother story. So I just took my time. I took my time, and she was in the same boat, like totally, like she graduated a year after I did. So it took her even a year later than I did. But we'd always have a joke like, "Hey, when you graduating?" I'm like, "I don't know. Before I die." That was like always the never ending joke. It's like, it's just the goal. Like we're gonna get there. It's just a matter of time. But I'm not gonna say in 3, 4, 5 years. And so that we just kept going. Right. So I think like weight loss, fitness, all that stuff is the same mindset. I'm gonna, like, we have a mantra, a manifesto, if you will, embodying a wealthy body, right? It's an identity shift. And what I mean by that is I live this way now. Like, I'm just going to pretend like I'm not a wealthy body. I don't eat healthy. I don't exercise. I don't like to exercise. I don't like to work out. I make excuses. I don't take responsibility. That's like the identity of someone who's not a wealthy body. Wealthy body takes ownership of where they are 100%. They spend less time making excuses, more time finding solutions, right? It's the identity shift. The timeline's not involved in our credo. It's not involved in our manifesto. It's not involved in our core values. It's just all about, hey, this is who I am now. Like I'm somebody that brushes my teeth at night. That's who I am. Like I don't need to motivate myself to brush my teeth at night. It's just something I do. And if I forget and I go to bed without my teeth brushed, I feel weird and gross the next morning.
Yeah,
and that's
you are.
what we're doing. We're adopting that same type of autonomy, that same type of identity shift with health, with fitness, with these habits. So I think it's really important just to, I don't want to say ditch the timeline, but don't hold that as the result. Don't hold that as like the pass fail, if you will, of your goal. But with that being said, it's really awesome. Like what that says to me when you remove the timeline, you adopt that identity shift, is that you're just committed to getting the goal regardless. Right. So when you're committed to getting the goal, the X's and O's, they don't matter. I know Logan said this before, but like our favorite people to work with are like, I've tried freaking everything and nothing's worked. Right? But that tells me that you've made the decision that you're going to freaking find a way. And really we can sort out the X's and O's. The X's and O's, that's our wheelhouse. But this part's already taken care of. Like the internal state is already taken care of. So that's awesome, because once you move through that, it doesn't matter what obstacles come up. It doesn't matter, because you're just going to learn and you're going to improve. You're going to adapt. You're going to change. You're going to evolve, and you're eventually going to get to your goal. But the decision was made in the front end.
And I think this kind of plays a little bit into the idea of like always enjoying the journey as well, because we've all hit goals. And the thing that actually fulfills you is actually not hitting the goal, ironically enough, like hitting a certain body fat, looking a certain way on stage or in a mirror or in pictures, like those are the goals, right? Or hitting a certain weight number, whether it be a strength goal, whether it be a certain like body weight goal. Like those are the things that actually fulfill you, right? It's actually the journey. It's taking the steps. It's meeting the people. It's the experiences, and the things that we always like love to tell the stories of are actually what what are the things we love to tell about after we've already completed a goal?
It's the journey.
How we got there.
Yeah. And what are the highlights to how we got there? Is it like, hey, it was really easy, or was it like, this is what I had to overcome?
Yeah, it's the mountain you had to climb.
Right. And so like, it's funny because when on the back end, it's easy. It's like, it's easy to talk about it because you already did it. Right. When you're going through it, most people are like, this sucks. They get scared, they get fearful. They're like, right. But if you can have the foresight to understand that you will get over it. And like, what's the story you want to write to yourself? What's the story you want to tell? The story of how you like got fearful and you got scared and you just like quit? Or you're like, you know what? Like, I want to tell a story that like, this sucked. I was scared. I was fearful, but I didn't quit. I kept pushing forward. I kept taking one step. I had no idea that I was gonna make it through. And all of a sudden I met this guy named Logan, right? And all of a sudden, like, boom, everything opened up. It was crazy. I never would have thought in a million years, right? Like that's the story we like to tell. And so if you can actually take that, if you can take that understanding, that wisdom, and pull it back into the present, and when you're going through the shit, as I like to call it, get excited about it. Like you're writing your story. Like you literally get to write your story. Like you are doing this right now. And so what story do you want to write? Right? The story that you get to enjoy the journey, you did all these crazy things in order to accomplish it. So like now you're winning no matter what, because either like you get to your goal fast, which is okay, that's success, or that you had to climb through all this crap, you went through all this adversity, and your story just comes a lot better. And so it's just like either way, it's a win. So that being said, we're going to talk about how to actually learn the right lessons, right? And so there's basically 4 quadrants. And so the first quadrant is that you actually achieve the result you set out for and you learned a lesson. Cool, right? Probably everyone's favorite one. The next one is that you actually learn the right lesson, but you didn't achieve the result, right? This is where people oftentimes miss the boat on, is that like just because you were successful, or I mean, excuse me, this is the part where people actually, this is like the next step. This is the step right before you actually hit your goal, is that you went through it, you took the step forward, you didn't quite achieve the result, but you learned what it's actually going to take for you to get there, right? Like Tim said, you've done everything. You've done keto, you've done Atkins, you've done Weight Watchers, you've done, P90X things. And now you learn the right lessons from there. Like, okay, I need a coach. I need some accountability. I need some actual custom game plan, right? Boom, you get to us. All of a sudden, that's you're one step away from being successful. Okay. The next one is that you were successful, but you didn't learn any lessons, right? Still success, right? And there's so many times that we're successful, we don't learn any lessons. Like, it's okay, right? Because honestly, most of the times it's like it's just unconscious. We're like, yeah, duh, learn the lesson. Or excuse me, I was successful. Cool. The only problem we have is when we are unsuccessful and we don't learn any lessons. And this is where we get into victimhood, blaming. It's not my fault. It's my kids. It's the time. It's the world's problem. It's not mine, right? Like I didn't take responsibility for this. So if I don't take responsibility for it, I can't fix it, right? So it's not my fault that I'm 40 pounds overweight. This is the only area that it is unacceptable to not be successful. Because you didn't choose to be unsuccessful, you chose not to learn the right lesson. You chose not to use that information from why you were successful to help better you forward. You chose to essentially blame other people and circumstances for something that you ultimately are in charge of, which is you have the power to create whatever you want in life. And the moment you give that away by blame, that's the moment that you lose. So Tim, if you want to follow that up with your idea of like learning the right lessons.
So I honestly don't think I could say that better than you, but I honestly think that the most tragic outcome is the victim story. Personally, when I get success, like easy success, sometimes it's hard to learn lessons. But my favorite outcomes are literally when I don't hit my goal, because then I'm searching for how can I do this better, right? Like I'll give a little analogy. So my freshman year of college, I was playing baseball for Montana State. I was a pitcher, and we went down. We were playing Utah State, so we were down in. I'm trying to think where the heck they're out of. I think it might be. It's not Logan. It's one of those pretty little Utah towns in northern Utah. And my parents came out to watch. It was my first game starting, and I got freaking shelled. Like I didn't even make it out of the first inning. I gave up 3 home runs in the first like 3 batters. It was rough. In high school, I was considered a fast pitcher. Like I had a fastball of like 88. It wasn't quite 90 miles an hour, but I had some decent heat. In college, that's not fast. That's just normal. That's not, in fact, it might be on the slower end actually. So I didn't really develop my other pitches that well. I didn't develop my curveball very well. I didn't develop a change. None of my off-speed pitches were really that developed. And so I remember after like the coach pulled me, like he pulled me real quick. I still have neck problems from that pitching experience, all the whiplash of looking at the balls flying over the fence. But the coach pulled me aside and I was fully prepared to get my ass just chewed. And he's like, yeah, that was your first college start. How do you think it went? And I was like, oh gosh, it was terrible. He's like, no, he's like, you just found out what you need to get better at. Like they were sitting and waiting on that fastball because they knew that's all you really had. So what we're going to do next week when we start, throwing pins and drilling is you're going to work on those off speeds. I'm not even have you pitch a fastball. You're going to throw the change up, the curve, the slider. You're going to work on just your off speed. And wouldn't you know, like it made me such a better pitcher, and it completely changed my mind because I was totally expecting to get my like getting just reamed. And instead he framed it as like, no, this is a learning opportunity. This is preseason. This doesn't even count. Like, what counts is that we found out what you need to work on. So now we get to go back to the drawing board. You get to practice on what you're not good at. So that would definitely be the result not achieved, but a big lesson learned. So I kind of carry that into all of my obstacles, really. So like another example is I tweaked my quad. I pulled my quad on last week on Thursday. Traditionally, like way in the past, before I had that frame shift, I would just think about not training my legs at all. In fact, I might not even train at all, like give my body time to heal, yada, yada, yada. But instead, I instantly thought of like, okay, that's an obstacle, but how can I get around that? What can I do to adapt? What can I do to change? And also, what can I do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Right. So instead of being down and disappointed, I look at these obstacles or these challenges as opportunities instead of like what they really are, what I used to think they were, which was obstacles.
Yeah, I think it's awesome from like even like a coaching standpoint is like, as we're coaching clients, like they're getting disappointed because like, oh, like I went off plan, or, I didn't follow through. It's like, cool. What did you learn? Right. And like same thing. It's like using that same example. It's like, awesome. I'm glad you did. What did you learn though? Like, I don't know that I suck. No, really. What did you actually learn? Right. 'Cause, I mean, that's honestly what people think. Though, like the first reaction is like, oh, I suck. I can't do this. I'm not capable. I'm not consistent. I'm not all the negative self-talk. Right. But as a coach, if you're able to come back around, it's like, awesome. But what did you actually learn? It's like, I don't have a plan. Okay, there we go. Now we're thinking. Okay, so and you start to like just like you did. It's like now you know what we got to work on. Right. It's the same thing. And so anytime that we have clients who come into issues, like it's exactly how we coach them. It's the same way, right? It's like, it's not about getting disappointed or like pointing fingers at them. We're like, yeah, you do suck. It's like, what did you learn, right? How do we get better from this? How do we use this as a great example of how to be successful in the future? And all of a sudden that becomes a way to empower them rather than to disempower them and feel like, oh, like I can't do this, right? Which is honestly the most limiting belief that, the most common limiting belief people have is that they just can't, that they're not capable of, that they're not worthy of it. And I think we're able to reshift that. It's like, oh, now it becomes empowering. John, what's your feedback on this one?
Not a whole lot to add other than one of the best things that I ever said to a client that I will continue to say is if I get the message like, hey, I'm having a really tough time, I've fallen off plan, I'm getting frustrated, whatever else is, I used to dread those conversations because like, oh my gosh, like that's a hard situation. This is going to be tough. And now literally all I say is, great, looking forward to it. Like that's it. And just to genuinely be excited to have that difficult conversation and approach it from, okay, what are the lessons here? What can we do different? And rather than saying, rather than me victimizing them and therefore victimizing myself at the same time, just get excited about it because there's always a win. No matter where you're at, there is a win in that situation.
That's funny you say that because like you disempower them by saying like, oh, let's talk about it, right? Like, oh, you have a problem that you can't control. It's like, I can't wait. Let's go for it. I was like, okay, now they're empowered and they're empowered. Now they're even curious, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, wait, he's excited about it. What's there to be excited about?
Yeah, and that's how you win. And that's our job for the clients. We teach them how to get excited about obstacles, right? When I see obstacles, I say, let the challenge begin, and I smile, right? That's inside the manifesto, or it's inside the manifesto, it's inside the affirmations. And so that's what it's about, is like repositioning what like the default. Like the default is to get sad and get disappointed and get discouraged. It's like create that anytime you start to feel adversity, you lean into it, you get excited, like, okay, this is my opportunity. I'm writing my story. I'm ready to do it, and all that is a frame shift. That's all it is. All right, and so let's talk about the belief breakthrough process, right? So this last slide here. So as challenges arise, use belief breakthrough work to find the right lessons, create the beliefs that continue to building our faith and persistence through the gestation period. Again, I gained weight this morning. Man, what a great chance for me to build my emotional strength. Versus like, I gained weight this morning. I suck, I can't do this. I'm not worthy, right? Small shift. I failed at losing weight in the past. Hey, look at all the lessons I learned on how not to lose weight, right? I failed at losing all weight in the past. Like, I'm a failure. Like ultimately, it really is your choice. And I think that's really powerful when you're able to actually create those beliefs and you're able to acknowledge those beliefs and say, like, does this belief serve me? Does it serve you to say that I gained weight this morning? Like, I'm not good at this. I'm a failure. What I'm doing is not working. Like, does that belief serve? course it doesn't, right? But if you looked at it like, man, what a great chance for me to build my emotional strength. Like I'm excited that I gained weight and I'm happy about it. I smile. When I see the weight go up, I smile, right? Because I'm in control. I know that I know that I'm gonna do what I need to do today to continue to achieve my goals, right? And I don't care if that scale weight stays up for 4 days. I know that I'm gonna continue to do what I'm gonna do for the next 4 years. And by the end of the 4 years, I know in my heart that I'm going to be at my goal weight, right? And like that's like a conversation that that you have when you're 100% bought in and you understand that you're saying the right things and you're bought into what your goals are and your vision is. Yeah, that's all I really got to say about that one. So John.
Talking about the what a great chance to build my emotional strength. I actually have a client right now who they're getting results. They're losing weight. They're doing great. But more than just the weight loss, the foundation that they're creating is actually incredible right now. The consistency that they're developing, the steps that they're taking every single day is incredible to see. And I asked the other day, it's like, hey, how are you feeling about your progress? And this person said like, oh, it's a little slow, but I know that they literally said like, I know I'm building this, or I'm taking the steps towards my wealthy body, something really close to that. I was like, see, there you go. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it takes, because that's how you know you are going to be successful forever. That's how you take away those unrealistic expectations and say, I'm on the path. And I said this once before, but the person who's on the path to having everything has more than the person who already has it, but isn't on the path anymore, or is. So that's where I want to help people get to, is just on the path, and to be thankful for that, and to build their emotional strength when they gain weight. Look at lessons learned when they're not losing weight, and go from there. It's an extremely powerful experience.
And especially when it comes to weight loss, like people get into weight loss because they want to lose weight, but that's not the goal. It really isn't. Like it's the fulfillment, it's the lessons learned, it's the person you become in order for you to lose the 50 pounds. Like that's what it's actually about, right? It's about how you make the decisions. It's really your belief in yourself. And when you start to see greatness in yourself, it's easy to see greatness in other people as well. And so again, I think that's why it's important to truly build that emotional strength and build all the skill sets that wrap around, because again, like weighing a certain number will never fulfill you. Looking a certain way in the mirror will never fulfill you. It's your journey. It's who you become. It's all the obstacles you overcame. And truly it's just really having that personal power to know that you can do whatever you set your mind to. So Tim, your thoughts?
So John, is that a quote, or did you come up with that?
I did come up with it. I'm proud of it.
I think we should just stop for a second and just appreciate that, because that should go in a book somewhere. I thought that was like a Gandhi quote, if that says anything. The man that is on the path to get, or the person that's on the path to getting everything, has more than the person that has everything but was not on the path.
Yeah.
Like write that down, put it in the gym somewhere. Like that's amazing.
That's fire.
So I want to give you kudos there. Second, I kind of want to just touch on weight in general. What I always tell my clients and anybody who asks me advice about weight is really just your relationship with gravity. That's all it is. There's nothing special about weight. It doesn't define your self-worth. It definitely doesn't define you as good or bad. It's just your relationship with gravity. If the earth was a little bit bigger, you would weigh a little bit more, right? Or if it was small, if you were on the moon, you wouldn't weigh nearly as much. Did you change it all? Absolutely not. You're still the same damn person that you were on Jupiter, as you would be on Mars, as you are on Earth. And you would weigh 3 different weights on each planet. So that's just there to break that belief that weight inherently means anything. What we really want to focus on is habits, routine, and mindset. That's honestly the foundational principles that lead to lasting results. If we don't build that foundation, it's much like building a house on sand. So let's say the person that goes on a crash diet, they do what's the HCG diet. That was probably the craziest one I've heard in the last 5 years. 500 calories. They take this BS shot every week, and they lose a crazy amount of weight. The doctor says literally don't exercise while you're on this plan. They lose a ton of weight, but this house that they built, for one, it's built out of straw, and second, it's built on sand. So the first time wind comes around, the first time the earth shakes a little bit, it gets a little too hot, it rains a little bit, like it just started snowing outside right now. First time that happens, the house just falls down. They didn't learn a single thing. But if we focus on our habits, our routine, and our mindset, we build that foundation, then those habits, the traits of success become habituated, much like brushing your teeth, When you get to the end goal, like you lose the 100 pounds, you lose the 50 pounds, you gain the 10 pounds of muscle, whatever that goal is for you, you win. It sticks. You never have to go back. And that's ultimately the real win. To me, losing a shit ton of weight and gaining it all back is an exercise in futility to me. Like, I would argue that it's worse than just staying big in the first place. It's way hard on your body. It's way hard on your heart. And it's also really hard on your psyche. So if someone is struggling, like they gain a couple pounds, I would tell them, like, pause. First of all, that doesn't define you at all. The weight doesn't define you at all. I want you to take a 30,000 foot view. We're looking at this as at the macro. In fact, the day-to-day changes are going to be up and down. You know, you have a little bit extra salt on one of your chicken meals. Oh, you retain a little bit of water. There's the weight right there. It's not body fat. But if we step back and we look at the trend over a long period of time, this is something I actually learned from Dr. Kashi, because he made us keep track of freaking everything over long periods of time, is you start looking at the numbers and they just slowly trend downwards. Oh, my habits are in line with that. But if you measure your self-worth or your value based off of one day's weight, that's just a snapshot in time. That doesn't mean anything. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that little piece of this slide.
Yeah, that's fire. It's fire. It's fire. And ultimately, it's like your beliefs are what going to serve you. And so using the belief breakthrough process to always challenge, like, is this belief serving me? Whether it's like, I need to lose weight in X amount of time, or, I'm not capable, I'm not worthy. Like, it's really always just challenging those beliefs and just asking yourself, like, does this belief serve me? Is this helping me get to my goal? Right? It's like me, when I face something that was unforeseen, like a challenge, I'm like, oh, I get disappointed, I get discouraged. I'm like, I don't like challenges. Like, is that belief serving you? Or it's like, I'm the type of person who, like, sees a challenge and I get excited about it. I'm the type of person who's like, here's my opportunity. Here's how I get to write my story. Here's the climax to my story, right? Like, I'm gonna love telling this on my deathbed. Like, which one of those beliefs is gonna serve you? And I think that's ultimately what it really is about, along with just understanding like there is a destination, and how long it takes you to get there. Like, does it really matter? And like, that's really the question you ask yourself. Like, does it really matter how long it's gonna take you to get there? And put that gestational period in a way that serves you, doesn't hurt you. Again, same concept. Like, pick a time that does serve you. So again, like, making it too narrow on the front end, or making it too like, I want to lose 10 pounds in 6 months, like, that's not enough. So you're gonna lose 100 pounds in 6 months, that's too much. So it's really is for you to find that proper gestational period to give yourself motivation to get there, and understand that if you don't get there, good. Why? Get curious. Don't get frustrated. Get curious on why you didn't get there, and just understand that, like, you set the target because you know it's in your best interest. But ultimately, like, it doesn't like you're not going to stop at 6 months. Now you just have the first checkpoint. Now you get to reassess all your information, all your data, and say, all right, now I'm going to create the next gestational period. Right? I'm going to create the next goal, and just understand that you're always on the journey. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, John, finish with a quote, because I think that's, I obviously didn't catch it, I just thought it was Gandhi because the way you said it, I was like, that is so good. So if you don't mind, finish with that quote and then let the people hear it, because I think that's really the point of this whole thing can be summarized in that, just that one quote.
Yeah, by all means. So the person who is on the path to getting everything has more than the person who has everything but is no longer on the path.
And so, to put it really simple, like, the point is to keep playing the game, right? Stay in the game, stay in momentum, stay moving forward, keep taking those steps forward. You never know where it's going to turn out. You never know what's going to lead to, the relationships, the fulfillment, the happiness. That's what it's all about. So appreciate you guys for giving you guys insights. We just finished a law of gestation. We actually finished all 9 laws of conscious creation. And so next week we'll be back with how to manifest your goals. Now that we know about the conscious creation, we'll talk about how to actually manifest goals, make them like the step-by-step process, the things to do, the action steps, so you actually can create any goal you ever believe you can actually hit. So thanks, John. Thanks, Tim. I appreciate you guys. Happy Thursday. We'll be back next week. See you guys later. Bye.
See ya.